Warm greetings to everyone from Sathya Grama, Karnataka, India, and special reverential greetings to Radhanath Swamiji as well as Sadhvi Bhagavati Saraswati Maji. Also, our greetings to the session chair, Dr. James Doty from the Center for Compassion and Altruism, Stanford University. Our special appreciation to Dr. Sundar Kamath and Dr. Sunny Anand for having organized this fifth annual Ideal Village Conference at Stanford in association with our foundation, Sai Global. This conference, which dwells on the idea of sustainability, is perhaps the most relevant conference in the present times. And the idea of sustainability is not new to Indians. The very first mention of such an idea is there in our Upanishads. An Ishavasya Upanishad, which is a part of the Yajurveda, in its very opening verse proclaims Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjitha magridha kasyasvidhanam. The meaning is all this that you see in this changing world is all enveloped by the divine, and therefore consume with sacrifice and do not take any other person's wealth. However simple this may sound, it's very, very profound and deep. Just a small Upanishad of 18 verses, in its very first opening verses, gives out the secret of sustainability. Simply put, it means give more, take less. That's what is meant by consuming with sacrifice. When Mahatma Gandhi was asked by an impatient journalist to summarize his philosophy of life in just 3 words, he quoted these 3 words from this very Upanishad when he said, Tena Tyaktena Bunjitha. The poor journalist who did not know Sanskrit asked him to translate it for him. And Mahatma Gandhi said, it means consume with sacrifice. When we sacrifice first and consume later, when we give more and take less, we become sustainable as a society, as a planet, as human race. When UN thinks about sustainable development goals, or when we all talk about sustainable development, sustainable future, more often than not, these ideas are based on capitalistic or socialistic ideas of society, very much against or different from the spiritual fundamentals that Indian texts offer us. If you could think of the whole human race in terms of 4 quadrants, with x axis about giving and the y axis about taking, the first quadrant would have people who give less and take less. They are the minimalists. And it's a trendy thing to be today, to take less, but then also give less. Then there are those in the second quadrant who take more and give less. I need not tell who they are. They are the capitalists of the world who take the resources, turn them into profitable ventures. And when it comes to giving back to the society, there is very little that they do. Then there is this third quadrant of those who take more and give more. These are the socialists who believe that everybody should get their share of the resources that the earth has to provide because everybody has right over it, equal right. And therefore they want everybody to consume equally. But with equal consumption of all, there is furthermore pressure on the resources. And therefore they take more, though they also give more to everyone. But none of these three are sustainable ideas. The fourth quadrant, which talks of people who give more and take less, they are the ones who can create a sustainable future. They are the spiritualists of the world. The capitalists, the socialists, the minimalists can at best do less damage, but they cannot correct the existing situation. They can take less from the nature, but they cannot replenish it. Only spiritualists are those when they not just reduce, not just recycle, not just reuse, but refuse to take what they don't need. The world has a hope to become sustainable. Saint Francis of Assisi would pray, O Divine Master, grant that I may not so seek to be consoled so as to console. When he prays this way, he only prays that I give more and take less. To be understood as to understand, to be loved, love with all my soul. In his prayer, what he essentially says is that I should always be ready to give more than what I receive. This is the simplest way to a sustainable planet, sustainable societies, sustainable relationships, sustainable happiness in life. Give more, take less. When we believe that we are born not to take but to give, when we know that we are here to serve and not to rule, when we realize that we are here to sacrifice, not to accumulate, we become sustainable. Now, the late American President John F. Kennedy said in his famous inaugural address, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. He just meant that. When we change our attitude from what can I get to what can I give, sustainability is the natural outcome. As an American proverb goes, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And that's precisely the second part of the verse, which says, do not take another man's wealth. We don't own this earth, we hold this earth in trust for our children, for our future generations. And it should only be looked at from that point of view and not from the point of view of having any rights, but only responsibilities towards passing on a better planet to the future generations than what we have inherited from our ancestors. This would not be possible unless we sacrifice our selfish desires of consuming endlessly and instead exercise restraint in our ways. On a lighter note, during these unprecedented COVID pandemic times, when consumerism is nosediving and most of the economies are plunging, somebody sent me a message which said, when we don't buy things now which we don't need with the money that we don't have, the economies are plunging. That is the story of economic bubbles. That is the story of the world that we live today in. Just because we have access to finances, just because we have access to cheap debt, that does not give us the right to buy more than what we need. When we buy mindlessly, borrow endlessly, what are we doing essentially? We are causing an artificial price rise of even essentials that are required for every man's survival, and thereby making them unaffordable to the common person. Just because we have access to money does not give us the right to consume more. All the economic bubbles, be it the Great Depression of 1930, to the dot com bubble, to the recent subprime mortgage crisis, the world has witnessed the downside of borrowed financial growth fueled by senseless lending and mindless spending. And the root cause of it all is simply taking more than what we need out of sheer greed. Mahatma Gandhi said, there is enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. Therefore, all that is not a need is simply all that which does not belong to us. That is another man's wealth, as per the Upanishads. A BBC report by the title How Many People Can Live on This Planet Earth, that by the end of this century, we will have more than 12 billion people, humans, inhabiting this planet Earth. They also said, very interestingly, that if every person on Earth, on an average, starts consuming as much as an average Indian does, then the Earth's resources can sustain up to 15 billion people. But the catch is here. If everyone on Earth starts consuming as much as an average North American does, the Earth has only so much resources to support 1.5 billion people, and we have gone past that figure probably 5 times by now. Therefore, the only way to sustain the planet, its resources, is to consume less and consume only what is very, very necessary. And just because you have the rights, you have the money, you have the might to take more than what you need, you should not. That's the responsible behavior that is called for in order to create a sustainable future. The monetization of essential commodities, commercialization of essential services have led to an unsustainable world. Today, we trade in futures of food grains without bothering about food for our future. We sell services like education and healthcare and burden the sick and the students alike under burgeoning debts. And US is completely aware of the $1 trillion debt or $1.5 trillion that is there in student debt, causing depression, suicides, and all kinds of other immoral practices in corporates. Is this the way we can create a sustainable future? Definitely not. Therefore, the need is to revisit our past, when the great cultures of this planet, originating in a spiritual outlook of life, respected all life and existence and cared for each other, thereby taking less and giving more. The ancient South African philosophy of Ubuntu, which loosely put means I am because we all are, defines the need for looking at the whole of creation as one interconnected and interdependent entity. Unless we develop this deeper spiritual outlook and shun selfish materialism, sustainable future will remain a distant dream. Let's not forget that this earth has been here for 5 billion years now, and probably it will be another 5 billion years by the time it crashes into the sun of our solar system. So forget about saving the planet Earth, it's not about that. We as a human race in their modern avatar have emerged only probably 200,000 years ago. And if you can think of whole of Earth's life as one full year, humans have appeared 1 minute before the midnight of December 31st. And that says volumes about who needs to be saved. It's not the earth which needs saving, it's the human race which needs saving. And it is in our own favor that we behave responsibility so that we as a human race would survive, so that we as human societies would pass on this legacy to our future generations. And for our sake and for the sake of our future generations whom we owe this planet, we need not merely reduce, reuse, or recycle, but actually refuse to consume more than what we need to. Without the way we lived in our past, firmly rooted in our spiritual togetherness, there is no future, let alone a sustainable future. These are the thoughts that have come from the very ancient texts of most of the world cultures. Take less, give more. That is the secret to sustainability. And on this occasion, when there are so many intellectuals, so many scientists, technologists, educationists, and people from all other walks of life, very eminent people have gathered to deliberate on this idea of sustainability, I want to request them on behalf of us who are there in India. India lives in its villages, said Mahatma Gandhi, way back in 1940s. And it is true till today. While a part of India lives in the cities, there is the other India that lives in villages. Cities have had unprecedented, unbridled, almost mushroom like growth. And all these principles of sustainability have been thrown to winds in the wake of the tremendous pressure to provide for the ever increasing population in the cities. But if India needs to develop as a whole, and I may to some extent be able to generalize it for the rest of the world, where there are developing countries, what we call third world countries, and there are the developed countries. And if you take an average of the whole world, there are a large number of people living in the developing countries akin to the villages in India. So the next phase of growth is about growing these villages, growing these developing countries. And the policies, the principles, the methodologies have to be very different from what has happened in the cities. We cannot afford to repeat these mistakes that we made while developing our cities. We have to retain the originality, the traditions, the culture, the naturality of our villages, at the same time provide them with the modern technology, facilities, amenities, which will make their lives easier, comfortable, and safer. There is much to be done in the field of providing safe drinking water, energy, maternal health, children's health, malnutrition, infrastructure in villages, veterinary sciences, and a whole lot of things. But if this time we can learn from our past and depart from the present that are facing, we can build a much more beautiful, a much more sustainable future than we can ever imagine. So I invite you all to draw from these great ancient spiritual ideals of human civilizations, which respected all creation, which believed in the interconnectedness of the entire planet, which was convinced that either we all live together or else we all will die together. Let us depend on these ancient ideas, and therefore, our past alone can create our future, our sustainable future. I'm very honored to be here this way, which is the new normal now, but I'm happy to be here to discuss some of these ideas with all of you, and I look forward to a lasting participation in terms of our efforts to create a sustainable future for the human race. I invite you all to come to India, work with us to help develop our villages and make this world, as they say, a better place, a sustainable place to live in. Once again, gratitude on behalf of our institutions to the organizers as well as all the participants, and to a special uh, acknowledgement to the services of Stanford, who has provided us with this opportunity. I once again thank everyone involved, and I conclude. Thank you very much.